Welcome everybody to episode number 288 of Goulet Q&A, where fountain pens are still a thing. I am Brian Goulet here from Goulet Pens to share this meticulously slapdash and succinctly rambling video where I take your fountain pen, ink, and paper questions and answer them as only someone who's devoted an unreasonable amount of their life to fountain pens could. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about LAMY left-handed nibs, good demonstrator pens for inks like Bay State Blue that like to stain, how I set up my phone for my hand shots in Q&A, my little rig setup. Let's see here. Good pens to match Colorverse Fountain Pen Day ink. It's a limited edition ink, but figured it's timely. Helping a finicky TWSBI Vac700r. And the best pens and nibs for showing off shimmering ink, as well as some of Brian's adventures and some fun facts about glitter at the end. So should be a pretty fun one. Start it off with some feedback, shall we? This is from GRPNKV. Almost 1 hour. Here we go. 2-hour videos is just around the corner. Well, I know that's how the Pencast started out. And some of my Q&As back in the day did get kind of long. It depends how many questions I take, and it depends how much personal stuff I share, because it's like I go into a time vortex when I'm talking about my adventures. So we'll see how today goes. I'm starting this really late. I'm recording this on Tuesday. It's like almost 5 o'clock already. So I don't want to be super late and hold up my whole family for dinner, but I'm trying to stick to a schedule. Anyway, Lily Plants 6266 says, I felt the excitement of learning something new when you described your bass adventure, talking about my bass guitar. I also like learning more about the instruments and music, even though I don't play. Well, that is cool, because I was worried that I was going a little too niche on that one. Your story reminded me of my first YouTube dive, how to make kindling, start fires in wet woods, like survival type videos, which are super cool and a deep rabbit hole you can fall down. That led to outfitting my car and my daughter's car with emergency equipment and first aid kits. Not a bad idea. Also, backup batteries for phones, etc. in case of outages. Well, there you go. It sounds like you're very prepared. And then the office heat problem was interesting. Yeah, heat's working great now. We had a problem with our fridge this week, but that's fixed now too. So, stuff breaks down over time. You just gotta fix it. And then Tabe89 says, fun fact, I live in the northern part of Iraq in the Kurdistan region. Here you hardly find anyone who has seen or used a fountain pen. The majority do not even know about them, except for those who were using them in the 1960s or 70s or earlier. However, many people call ballpoint pens pandan in Kurdish language, which literally means fountain pen. It seems that this term still remains in the language to describe any pen. What is interesting is that when I show them my fountain pens, I tell them that these are real pandan fountain pens, not the ones that they use, and they're always surprised. That's so cool. I've never heard of that before. But yeah, that is really interesting how, fountain pen has different knowledge throughout the world, and that's really cool. So I hadn't heard that before, so thank you for sharing that, Tabe. Let's get right into the questions. I have a bunch of hand shots this week, which I've also found I go long on. So I'm just going to get right into it. I took fewer questions this week. It's only 6 instead of more. All right, first question. Beth Yonker 555. Could you demonstrate the LAMY left-handed nib? What's different about it from other LAMY nibs? Are they going to come out with LAMY left-handed stub nibs? I'll start out with the stub. I don't think, probably not. Stub nibs generally are somewhat favorable to people who are writing left-handed, mostly like side writers and underwriters. If you're an overwriter, it might be kind of tough. It would actually match the, if you're an overwriter, right? So if you're like hook-handed is sometimes what it's called as a lefty. If you're writing with a stub, that's ground like wider, then it is tall, I guess, whatever you call it. Anyway, the cross stroke is going to be thin, downstroke is going to be wide. Well, if you're hook-handed, you're actually writing with it kind of on the mirrored image of what an underwriting right-handed person will write. So if you're writing with a stub, it actually looks kind of identical. But you're writing in a push motion instead of a pull. It's really hit or miss as to which stubs feel comfortable or not. The LAMY ones, I don't really know. I don't write left-handed, so when I try, my handwriting's so bad, I don't have the motor skills to discern what's good writing and what's bad writing. But the lefties that I know, the LAMY ones are like okay. I haven't heard that they're like amazing or not amazing. They're kind of just, they kind of know what they are. But are they going to make specific left-handed stub nibs? That is pretty niche. Probably not. The stubs are not, I mean, they're kind of popular, but not the most popular worldwide. So I would be really surprised if they did something special for lefty stubs, but you never know. Okay, so I'm going to try something. I can't really demonstrate so much because honestly, in terms of like what it puts down on the paper, it doesn't really show that much of a difference. But what I'm going to try is do my little phone setup, and then I'm going to try looking at it through a loop and see if I can show you these nibs close up. It's going to be a little wonky, but let's give it a shot. So I got 3 different pens here with 3 different nibs. I've got the black Safari with a medium nib, the red Safari with the left-handed nib, and then the aquamarine here with a broad nib. I find that the left-handed nib is closer to a medium, but it's a little bit in between a medium and a broad. It's not ground to give any type of a different shape of a line, you know, so it's not like a stub or anything like that that's going to make the writing vary from upstroke or downstroke or anything. And it's the same hardness and all that kind of stuff. It's literally just the shaping of the tipping that makes the difference here. So I'm going to try to show you that. I'm going to experiment a little bit using a loop on my phone. It is going to be something. So let's see how it goes. Okay. So I'm going to show you, first off, the medium and the left-handed nib together. So I'm going to show you kind of face on what they look like. And this has been very tricky for me to do, so bear with me if it's not amazing. Okay, so you can see sort of like the width of it. And granted, you're just seeing them relative to each other, but on the left side here, we have the medium. On the right side is the left-handed nib. So it's ever so slightly broader. But the bigger difference that you're going to see is when I turn it sideways. And this is testing all my pen dexterity for filming because I'm having to hold the loop and the phone and the everything. It's interesting. So again, on the left-hand side, we have the medium nib. On the right-hand side, we have the left-handed nib. So the biggest difference you're going to see is this side, right? So on the left-hand side here with the regular medium nib, it's much more of just kind of a round ball, right? Which means that as you hold it up like more at a steeper angle or a lower angle, it's going to write fairly consistently. And it's just going to be kind of round. Now the left-handed nib here, it's still round, but it's a much deeper slope, like much more gradual slope, I guess, than it is on the regular medium nib. There's a little more tipping material on there, and it's ground so that essentially as you're writing left-handed, because you're writing more of in a push motion, it's meant to be a little more forgiving in that push. So it's got just kind of a bigger pad for your hand to be able to kind of, you know, push it and not dig into the paper quite as much. That's basically the whole point of this thing. And then I'll try to show it next to the broad nib as well, so that you can see the difference. The broad nib, especially from the side, you can tell is certainly more tipping material there. But you might be able to see the grind, how it's a little bit different as well. So yeah, you can definitely tell the broad is more tipping material, but it's not as gradual of a slope on the grind, you know? So that's essentially what you're getting with the left-handed nib, is that gradual slope. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference in terms of the line width or anything like that. If you were to, I mean, I've written with the left-handed nib myself. It basically feels like a medium nib. It's really not much different. But from those that I've heard who are left-handed, they find benefit when using the left-handed nib, particularly if you're like a side writer. You know, if you're really kind of directly pushing that nib, that's where the most benefit is. If you're an underwriter or like a hook-handed writer, not as much noticeable because you're kind of dragging the nib to the side a little bit more, in which case it's going to feel pretty similar. But really it's that push motion that's going to make the difference for you. So, you know, if you're left-handed and you write in that push motion, it might be worth trying a left-handed nib. If you can get your hands on one, you may find it beneficial. It's not like life-changing. You know, I haven't heard, you know, life-changing things about it, but there are some people that really like them. So there you go. Hopefully that works. I felt a little precarious, but you know, maybe I'll figure out a better way to do that in the future, but at least you get some kind of idea. Boy Glue says, what is a good demonstrator pen? Simple question. But more clarification, I'm looking for a medium nib, good capacity, ink capacity, and a body that does not stain easily. I may use it with Diamine Sapphire Blue or Noodler's Bay State Blue ink. Also a nice converter for that pen. Thank you. Okay. Demonstrator pens that take converters. You usually don't get a choice of converter, except with Pilot. There are a couple of pens that Pilot has where you can upgrade to a bigger converter. I've got a mention for one of those. But first off, we got to talk about Bay State Blue. I cannot recall a pen that does not permanently stain, but that does not have Bay State Blue cling to it. Basically, whatever pen that you put Bay State Blue in, any demonstrator pen, it's going to look Bay State Blue, like the whole thing. It's just anything Bay State Blue touches, it's going to get on there. Now it does clean off. It cleans off with bleach instead of with like an ammonia-based, solution like typical pen flushes might be made out of. And most inks clean up well with that. Bay State is kind of a different animal. So I got to mention Bay State as a special thing because it's just not a normal ink. And it's kind of notorious for that reason. It has been for quite some time. It's a great ink. It looks amazing, but it is a little more upkeep. And in a demonstrator pen, I honestly think the easiest thing for you to do will be to devote a demonstrator to using Bay State Blue and basically not much else. Maybe some other blues and stuff, but you're really fighting an uphill battle trying to get that to be perfectly clear after you've inked it up with that color. It can be done, but it's a lot of work to clean it back out. And it's probably just not worth it. If you use Bay State, what I hear for the most from people is they will eyedropper fill a platinum preppy and use that for Bay State. It's a very inexpensive way to go about it. You can get a medium nib on it. It's not the gushiest medium nib, but it's a pretty inexpensive way to go. You're talking under $10, even with the eyedropper stuff. And then you can have a devoted Bay State Blue ink. I really think that's a good way to go because you're just going to save yourself a lot of frustration trying to clean it out. And there's some other options too. You can really do that with any pen with Bay State, but the people that I know that like to use Bay State on a regular basis, they find it easiest just to dedicate a pen to using that ink. Diamine Sapphire Blue, it's not a super, super popular ink. There's a lot of really good Diamine Blue, so I don't have any specific experience using this in a demonstrator. But if it's like most of the other Diamine Blues, it's going to be a kind of a deeper blue with, a little bit of a hint of red to it that it might leave behind. Most of these darker blues tend to leave a little bit of a red sheen, especially on the feed. So I think that one, and obviously the Bay State too, but I think that one or any blue in that kind of shade, you're going to be looking at the most troublesome part to clean out will be the feed and like the grip section. So if you have any demonstrator pens that don't have a perfectly clear grip section, like it's more of a smoky grip section, those are honestly a little easier because it's not quite as noticeable, right? Certainly Platinum Preppy is a good option for this one as well. I think the TWSBI Eco would be a pretty decent one. TWSBI Eco is pretty good about not having a lot of things stain it. And the TWSBI 580 as well. Also pretty good about that. So the thing that I like about both of those as well, first, the medium nibs are great. You can always get broads on them too if you really want it to be gushier. But also they are disassemblable. So when it comes time to cleaning them out, it's going to be a little more, well, as long as you can get it back together. And we've got some videos on that. But if you don't mind disassembling it and you can do it, they give you the tools and everything with the pen. It's a pretty good way to go because then when you need to clean it out, you can use, cotton swabs and stuff like that, which makes cleaning it out so much easier when you can actually like mechanically clean it out as opposed to just chemically. The Eco is more affordable and I like that pen. However, the grip section on that one is going to be a little harder to clean out. Now you can remove the nib and the feed out of there. It's just friction fit. And so then you can like swab it in there, but it's a clear grip section and the grip is attached to the pen. So it's a little more involved there. Whereas when you have the 580, it's got essentially a nib unit. The grip itself is clear, but the ink is not flowing anywhere where you can see it through that clear part. It's inside the black housing. So you kind of hide that. It's mostly the feed just like on the underside, near the nib that you're going to see some of that like red kind of stuff cling. And then for cleaning the inside of the pen, you can disassemble it and all that kind of stuff. And the nib unit unscrews out of the 580 as well. So those are pretty good options, I feel like, as well. Noodler's Ahab, if you're into that, if you're into Flex or anything like that. And the Conrad as well could be decent ones. Those are good. I know a lot of people that like to devote their, Bay State or whatever to that. But a Flex nib, it's going to put down a lot of ink. And Bay State can get a little bit feathery on certain papers. And if you're putting in a Flex pen, it can just be a lot. It's just a lot of ink to put down. So maybe not for that reason, but I know a lot of people have done that, especially because it's a more relatively affordable demonstrator. And then the last one I have is a Pilot Explorer Clear. This is what I alluded to at the beginning of the question. I think if you use a Clear Explorer, you get a couple advantages. One is you get that smoky grip, so it's going to sort of hide any of that, little hint of color that it might leave. It's going to kind of mask it with that smokiness, and because that's going to be the hardest area to clean. Also, you can pull the nib and the feed out of there pretty easily. Pilot nib and feeds are really reliable, and they're pretty easy to set in there, so you can pull that out and clean it out easier. And then you can use either refill Pilot cartridges, which is pretty easy to do. You can use a Pilot Con 40. That's probably my least favorite option because the converter, cleaning that converter out is not my favorite. And then you get the Con 70, which is a bigger ink capacity converter. So that in terms of any converter is going to be one of the better options, except maybe the TWSBI Swipe. That has a bigger converter, but the Con 70 is one of the biggest converters out there. But also you can eyedropper convert your Pilot Explorer. Now you're really going to get that ink all up in there. So that would be the kind of thing with the Bay State Blue, like maybe just devote the pen to it. But it's a little more of an investment. You're talking more like $25 instead of, $6 for a preppy. And also like the eyedropper conversion for the Explorer, I've had good luck with it, but it is like two separate pieces on the back of that thing. Potentially there's a chance that it could leak out of there. So I would test it first with like water or, a different ink or something like that, doesn't stain as much. And maybe just try that out, but could be decent options for you. So I got a few different options and hopefully some of that is helpful for you. All right. Donna Kelly, 8911. What is the best pen and nib to get the flow to show off your shimmer or sparkle inks? I have a medium TWSBI, a broad LAMY, broad Diplomat, double broad Pelican. For some reason, I don't feel the joy or see some awesome experience that everyone talks about. Is there a special pen or nib that shows these inks off? When it comes to showing off, pretty much any shimmering ink or like a heavy sheening ink, it's all about ink volume on paper. So basically the wettest, broadest thing that you can do, the more dramatic it's going to look. But it's actually, the nib and all that stuff is important, but it's not like, your LAMY broad is going to write so different than a Pilot broad, because they're going to be relatively close to each other. If you're using a Noodler's Flex versus, something like that, versus a Pilot Extra Fine, it's going to look drastically different. But even like your double broad Pelican, like that's going to put down a lot of ink. You don't get much heavier than a double broad unless you go to like a gushing Flex. So it sounds like you have the pens that should be able to show it off a little bit. I would suspect maybe it has to do with your paper. And so I wanted to show just a little demonstration, to give you another little hand demonstration here. I have an ink that I think, I don't know if it's the best ink to demonstrate it, but it's an ink that has a little bit of different tone shade to it, and it has shimmer in it. This is Colorverse by Starlight, featuring Colorverse a little bit today. So I have that. I'm going to actually show you on a couple different papers and show you how it looks. So let me pull that and get that ready. All right, so I tried to grab papers of like 3 variants basically. So I have this older Filofax planner that has some of the most absorbent paper that I've ever seen before. It tends to flatten out colors pretty good. You really don't get a ton of shading. You can get some shimmer on it, but it really knocks a lot of it down just because it's so absorbent. So I'll flip to a fresh page of that, and then I will put down some Witch by Starlight. So because this is a shimmering ink, here, I'll show you on this one. Because it's a shimmering ink, the shimmer is going to gather up at the bottom. So you just want to kind of gently roll it to really get that shimmering into suspension, because it starts falling out of suspension pretty quick. That's not uncommon with really heavily shimmered inks. And the thicker the particulate, the faster it's going to drop out. So I'm going to use my little Kakimori dip nib with the little mini nib holder because, you know, in this instance, it'll work better because it won't be like poking the camera. So I'm going to give it a little dip. And then this is the Filofax paper. So just Colorverse, Witch by Starlight. Okay. And then we're going to give it a big old glob. That's what I like about the little Kakimori thing is you can just do like swaths of ink. Now it is interesting because it's like, normally I can go back and forth a lot more with this, but I am having a really hard time doing that with this paper because it's literally just soaking it right up. You can see how fast that's kind of drying on there. And it really flattens it out quite a bit. Now we don't sell this paper. We did carry Filofax years ago. It's more of like a planner company. So it's really good about dry time. But when you're putting down a really heavy ink, it's only going to look but so good. Okay, so I do have some shimmer in here. I don't know with the lighting how good that is. I'll hold it closer to the camera once I do the rest of them. The next paper I have, which is a step up, this is the Rhodia 80 gram paper. And I know the color paper is a little bit different. Don't get hung up on that too much. We're going more for just like how drastically different it's going to look. Let's see. Okay, Colorverse. So right off the bat, I can tell that it's a clear, more defined line. By Starlight. Get a little dry there. I need to dip it again. All right, now watch when I go back and forth on this one. You see how much further I can go? That's just because the ink itself is coated so much more. It's more ink resistant, right? So what that's going to do is that's going to allow the ink to pool up more. You know, the more absorbent paper, and the Filofax is just representative of an absorbent paper. It's going to soak up a lot of the ink, so it might actually look a little bit darker. It's going to shift the color a little bit, not just because it's off-white paper, but because of the way that it's absorbing the ink. It's going to do that. And this one, I actually get some okay shimmer on the big swath here. So it's not killing the shimmer, but it is going to look very different than the Rhodia. And then the next paper that I have is Tomoe River. So I've got some Tomoe River. This is, what thickness is this? I want to say this is the 52 gram. So this is the classic stuff. Okay. So I'm going to try it again on this, and then we'll see how it all looks. You can see here how much longer it's still not dry over here yet. So the Rhodia is drying slower. All right, Colorverse. Witch by Starlight. This is not like a super scientific test here because the angle that I'm holding the Kakimori is changing the thickness of the line, but you're getting the idea. And then this is a very ink resistant paper as well. There, I can get that whole swath in one pass. So we got like more absorbent, still pretty ink resistant. And then this stuff is really kind of like the gold standard for what you see a lot of people posting online that are posting the most dramatic stuff is going to be on Tomoe River or some paper close to it, Cosmo Airlight or something like that, that is going to be this level of ink resistance because that's going to show it off the most. Basically, volume of ink is going to make it pool and get more saturated. The shimmer is going to sit all on top and pool up and be more concentrated. You know, the thinner paper here, this 52 gram, it's going to buckle a little bit, right? Which may or may not be desirable. You know, when you're putting this much ink on it, it's going to buckle. But what that does is that also changes how the ink pools up and makes it more dramatic. So let's see if I can situate myself where I can show you all of these a little bit closer. These are not the most ideal lighting conditions. Look how absorbent that is. It like went through the back. Not ideal. But anyway, Okay, so Witch by Starlight here, when I hold it up and I can show you, let's see if I can zoom a skosh. There, so you still get some shimmer, right? Like when I show it directly with the glare of the light. It's not bad, right? You get that shimmer, so that's cool. The Rhodia, let's see about that. The Rhodia, oh, sorry, my mic is really cramping my style when I'm trying to show you this stuff. Might have to figure out a different way to do that. Okay, here we go. Witch by Starlight. So, still got some shimmer to it, but actually the shimmer looks a little more dramatic on the file effects. Maybe it just has to do with, you know what? I dipped the nib like 5 times when I did this. So it kind of makes sense that the shimmer is going to be more because I just put straight up more ink down. You see the color still looks kind of flat on this, but the shimmer is stronger because of how much I put down on there. But then the Rhodia, what you do get with a more ink resistant is you get a different, certainly a crispness to the lines that you have on here. You're going to get more shading, and you get like when you do cursive, for example, and you cross over your letters, it's more likely to pool. This ink doesn't show it off the best, but you can see even just like right here, you know, it's lighter, but then I pooled more ink over here, and this is what took longer to dry. Well, that's going to be darker, and it's going to show some alternate tones of the colors too. And then Witch by Starlight on the Tomoe, same kind of thing, even crispier. Shimmer, how does it show the shimmer? Not as intense. Huh, how about that? You know, honestly, each ink is going to be kind of different. But the paper, and also it's really hard to capture this on video too. So it looks a little more dramatic to my eye. What I'm seeing with this is I'm seeing a little bit more of like the red tones. I don't know how that's going to translate on camera here, but that's what I'm seeing. So even just with an ink like this, it's not maybe as drastic as some other ones that are out there, like the multi-tonal inks and stuff. You can see how much of a difference the paper can make in terms of the properties that show up and how much I had to accommodate, you know, my writing style too, to accommodate these. So I would, as much as I can appreciate where you're coming from about trying to find the right pen, the right nib, it's really about the pen, you know, the pen itself, the ink, and the paper. Especially with shimmering inks, especially with high shading inks, the paper matters disproportionately. So you didn't mention in your question what kind of paper you're using, but I would really take a look at that and see about that, because I think that will give you some more dramatic results without having to buy a new pen. Let's take the next question, shall we? Ann Wagner says, I want to get your Colorverse Fountain Pen Day ink. Wee, little limited edition ink. It's not ours, we just carry it. They did this as a Fountain Pen Day thing. It's a limited edition thing, but other people have it too. Anyway, it looks gorgeous. What do you think would be great pens to use with this ink? Matching color, complementary color. I'm thinking about maybe one of the TWSBI Ecos with gold trim to show off that rich blue-purple ink. So honestly, I think a lot of it's going to be preference. You have a lot, especially when you go into the complementary colors. Oh my gosh, you can get so many complementary colors to like a bluey purple kind of a thing. You could go silver, you can go orange, yellow, red, green. There's really so much that can complement it. So I'm going to start off with ones that are going to match, right? So I would call this color like an indigo. It's a very dark blue, but it has definitely a purple lean to it. So I think the TWSBI Eco Dark Sapphire, since you mentioned TWSBI, certainly you could go with a TWSBI with the gold trim. The Dark Sapphire does not have gold trim, but I do think that blue looks really nice. The TWSBI 580 ALR Navy also I think would be a good match. Looks pretty classy. And then the TWSBI Kai limited edition. It's not as much a demonstrator, but it's got that blue resin to it that looks really cool, and the trim is nice. So any of those would be good TWSBIs to go for. To spread the love around on some other brands, you have the Diplomat Magnum, which has a pen called Indigo Blue, which I think is a pretty deadlock match for color for this ink. And it's a relatively inexpensive pen. So that one's pretty cool. The Kaweco Lilliput or the Supra in Fire Blue. So you fire blue, you get that blue, you get some purples, you get some, you know, other shades because of that fired process that they do. That mixture of kind of like that fire treated color I think kind of complements well with this ink too. So those are kind of cool. I'm going a little bit more upscale here, but the Platinum 3776 Chartres Blue. That pen is gorgeous. And yeah, I would say that Chartres Blue color, it's like famous for the Chartres Cathedral in France. It definitely has that blue with a slight purple to it. It's a famous color that really kind of matches well with this ink. So I think that would be a good pairing. You actually can get a couple different trim options with that one. The Edison Premier and Delphinium. So this is an exclusive we've had for a long time. And it's going to be a little more dominant purple, but it is a purple and blue pen for sure. So I think that could look really nice in it. And then the complementary ones, this one I'm not 100% sure about, but the Pilot E95S in the maroon and ivory. So I'm not sure how the maroon, I think the maroon and the bluish, it's the purple in it that I'm not quite sure if that would clash with the maroon, but I know the gold and the ivory would look really good. So honestly, what I'd like to see is instead of maroon, have like that shade of blue, like an indigo blue with ivory and gold. That would be a hot looking E95S. But alas, that's not anything that we have. So you could look at the maroon and gold. I mean, it's a great pen anyway, but that would be an interesting pairing. Pilot Explorer in red. I don't know. Red and blue seemed like it went well. I literally had to Google. I'm not great at matching colors. Never been a gift of mine. So I literally had to Google like what color complements indigo blues. And it was like greens, yellows, reds, whatever. Yeah, there's so many different things. And then the other one I had was the Diplomat Aero in either the evergreen with gold, which is a relatively new one that we just launched. I think that would look pretty cool. Or just the regular green with like the dark trim. Could also look kind of nice if you wanted to go more the green route. You really have so many options. You could basically make almost anything complement this color. So those are some fun things that you can check out. All right. At PRNAJAF. I don't even know how to say that. For what it's worth, my TWSBI Vac700r is quite moody and not a reliable starter. Any suggestions? So I want to do another hand shot so I can show you what's going on with my Vac700r. So Vac700 is kind of a different pen. The thing about the Vac700r is it's a vacuum filling pen, hence the vac part of the name. What's different about most vac filling pens, this one and the Pilot Custom 823 being the most popular that do this, part of the benefit of this is when you have the piston rod closed all the way down, there's a seal right here. There's a rubber seal that closes off the ink chamber of the pen from the feed, which is very advantageous if you're going to be traveling, changing altitudes, either like driving to various altitudes or flying for sure, because this is a very large ink capacity. And if you have a little bit of ink in here with a lot of air, it gets a little less stable and it can like burp more and stuff like that and harder to regulate the ink flow. So they lock it off, with these things. So when you go to fill the pen, the first thing you're doing here, let's see if I can get a good shot of it. The first thing you're doing is you're unscrewing. So the thing about the Vac700R is it's a vacuum filling pen, hence the VAC name. Same thing goes for this and the Pilot Custom 823. They're probably two of the most popular vacuum filling pens that are available today. So it's got a huge ink capacity, which is great and convenient for a lot of things. But the thing about a large ink capacity is when you have a lot of air in the chamber and not as much ink. So when it's like maybe a half or a third full or less, you can get some instability in terms of the ink flow. You can usually cause like burping or things like that. So there could be some of that going on. There could be some air bubbles or something like that due to the instability of it moving around. That is a thing that could happen, especially if you're moving around a lot, traveling with it, that kind of a thing. There could be a little bit of that in there. But the reason I wanted to take this specifically and show you some hand shots of this is because of the function of this pen and the fact that it's really a demonstrator. I can show you easily what's going on. So because of the burping potential for something with this volume of ink, when they design these vac pens, they have it where the filler knob here, when it's closed all the way, it has a seal right here that is sort of a double seal. I mean, it acts as a seal on the side walls to get that vacuum filling action. But then also when it's closed all the way down, it seals the ink chamber off from the rest of the pen. And this is probably like the number one thing that some people are not aware of when using either this or a Custom 823, is that, and the same thing with the Visconti double reservoir power fillers actually. But when you have it closed all the way like this, your ink is cut off. So the only ink that you're using is what's in the feed. And that's going to be okay for a while. You know, you can definitely write a bit with that. But if you don't open up that ink chamber every so often to let more ink down, you're going to start having some starting issues, and you're going to have some flow issues because essentially the pen is drying up. So that's going to be your biggest thing. Number one thing I wanted to mention, because if you weren't aware of that, definitely, like, all you got to do is crack the thing open a little bit. And you don't have to do it like every time you write or anything. You can do it as much as you want. But honestly, just doing that and then kind of holding the pen there for a little bit, I find if you crack that open every now and then and write with a little bit and then just, you know, close it back up, a bunch of ink has made its way back down. Your feed is all filled back up again. You're good to write, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 pages of writing with that much ink in there, and you're going to be fine. So just keep in mind that's what's going on there. And then kind of beyond that, honestly, I think you're kind of just into like normal territory in terms of pen cleaning and maintenance, right? So I'll just mention a few different things, you know, because I don't know how new everybody is here for just like regular maintenance. Especially it's a good rule of thumb to clean out your pen every time you're changing color, or maybe every month or so. Kind of depends on your climate. It depends if you're having any flow issues. Not a bad time to try cleaning out your pen. So if you do the knob thing and that doesn't seem to be solving your flow issues, it could mean that there is either, you know, a cleaning issue, like there's been a buildup of some dried ink or something like that inside the pen, or there could be like a mechanical sort of malfunction issue. You know, you could have some paper fibers that have gotten jammed up in the slit of your nib that maybe need to be cleaned out. It could be that the tines are slightly misaligned or got knocked out of shape or something like that. But that's not unique to this pen. That's just like any fountain pen. You're going to have some basic kind of things to check for if you're having flow issues. The nice thing about the Vac700R is that, you know, it's relatively easy. I mean, you can take the whole nib unit off, right? So when it comes time to clean this out, you know, you could throw this thing in an ultrasonic cleaner if you have one. You could take a bulb syringe and flush the back of this, to go much faster. If you're just pumping and dumping, you know, with the vacuum filling part, it will, you know, clean this out. But I find when you're doing a thorough cleaning, it's not necessarily going to do it the best, because the speed at which these vacuum filling pens are going to force the water through, most of that water is going to flush back out actually through the filler hole, you know, which is right up here. And it's going to flow through. It's not going to work its way as much as maybe some other pens that might have some more like resistance to them as you're flushing them out, which is fine. But honestly, because this one is disassemblable, you just take this off and you can bulb syringe it and clean the living daylights out of this thing, and just put a ton of water through it. But if you want to as well, you can actually remove the nib and feed. Now it is a little bit of a tight fit when you first get in there, but I find if you like pinch it with your fingers, you know, on top and the bottom of the feed and the nib there, you know, pinch it tight together, and then you sort of like push your fingers off of your other fingers to be able to pull it out without like totally yanking and breaking the thing. You're able to do that. Now it does fit back in there in a certain way, I believe, on this pen. Or maybe it's just a round. No, maybe it's just totally round. But anyway, so your nib and feed. Then if you need to clean it out, it's so much easier to clean this. You can, you know, cotton swab up in here. This is my preferred way to do it if I'm actually having some like serious flow issues and I think there might be some like junk up in there. Let me see. My lighting is terrible, but does this have to go back in a certain way? I legit can't remember. Oh. My lighting is set really good for shooting this video, but it is not for inspecting nibs. Okay, I think it does have to actually go back in a certain way. Okay, there we go. So don't force it, but you know, there is a kind of a certain way it has to fit back in there. But anyway, only do that if you're comfortable. It's probably not necessary. you can just flush it, and then especially, you know, once you can take the nib unit off. But I would try those things. And then, you know, maybe if there's like a tine alignment issue or something like that, that could affect your flow. That could affect your starting for sure. If you have really dry writing ink, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of different factors that could be involved. But in terms of what's unique to this pen, I think I've shown you what I wanted to show you. So hopefully that helps you out. But if not, at least you've learned something. All right. Last question that I have for you is from LilyPlants6266. How do you set up your iPhone with a tripod without filming the tripod legs? Well, I thought this was a fun question to take. And because I picked so many questions that I was filming with my phone, now my success rate today, I could have been happier with how I'm doing here. I'm still messing with the lighting and this kind of stuff. And I'm finding like I just don't have the best lighting for the autofocus on my phone to really be able to pick up. So I'm going to have to mess with that. But anyway, those are my camera woes. Y'all don't really care. You just want to watch it and you just want to see good stuff. So I will put the work in there to make that better. But I wanted to show you my little rig here. So I'm actually going to start recording. And then I'm going to take it off of the setup so I can show you what's actually going on here. So you're not seeing any tripod legs because there are no tripod legs. So this is very much kind of my own custom setup, right? It's a little bit jerry-rigged, but then that's how most photo and video things go. So this setup, the way that it's working here, sorry, let me just move some stuff out of the way to show this a little better. Okay, so the way this setup works, it is essentially a microphone, a desktop microphone base, which has some weight to the bottom of it, but I found that it's a little tippy. So as like 5 minutes before I started recording this, I was like, I need to get something to add some weight to it. So I just grabbed a roll of gaff tape and put that on there, but I might come up with something a little more permanent. But anyway, so a little microphone pole. I just have these little clamps. These are super handy things for if you're doing any type of video stuff. I don't remember what they're called, like baby clamps or something like that. But basically it just allows you to clamp onto smaller things like C-stands or microphone stands like this. It has a quarter-inch threaded hole on this side and a 3/8 inch threaded hole on, no, not 3/8. What is it? 3/8 and ½ inch? No, it's not ½ inch. Quarter-inch and whatever is 3/16. That's it, 3/16 on this side. The two standard sizes that you get with photo gear stuff. And then I just have some like little adapters in here and whatever. And this is just a rod that you get for a C-stand like you would normally for like photography studio stuff. We have all kinds of gear like this. And so I just grabbed stuff that we had on hand. And then this thing is kind of neat. So this is basically like a ball joint that allows me to set and position this wherever I need to, right? And then, oh boy, is this impossible to do one-handed. Anyway, once you get it into the place that you want, you tighten it down, it tightens up both joints, and it's really handy for when you just need like maximum flexibility, right? And then the other thing that I got, and this I got is just relatively new. This is my little phone holder. So this, you can position it a couple different ways, which I have the ball joint, so I have a lot of flexibility there. But this is cool. It's got what's called a shoe mount. So the mount that's on here, if I unscrew, oh boy. I'm finding this is really hard to do one-handed. Okay, so this device, it just unscrews out of here. So this has a shoe mount, so if you wanted to put this into the top of a camera or some other kind of setup, it's kind of standard like that. But then, you know, it's just got a spring-loaded little holder. I actually just got this recently. It's like some threaded holes in here too. So it's just a lot of versatility for this, and you can position it in different ways. You can rotate it like that. So if I wanted to do vertical shooting as well, pretty easy to do. I think I just got this at B&H. There's just all kinds of stuff like this. But yeah, that just gives me the most flexibility. So that's my little setup. It's nothing fancy. You know, probably a little more elaborate than your average person probably needs, just because I piecemealed it together with a lot of stuff that I already had. But hey, it works for me. I know when I'm seeing other people's setups, I just think it's fascinating to see how people do things. And this is definitely, you know, my own way that I've set to do this here. But the whole idea behind this setup is exactly what you kind of mentioned there, is that I can have the phone here and have it out far enough to where I'm not having to see the legs or the base. And that's what I was going for. So I had the extra weight on there because the further out you put it, the more tippy it gets, especially because I've got like the big phone. And so that just helps with that. But yeah. And normally we have other setups for like when we do shooting like at more permanent desk setups, but this is like literally my office desk that I work at every day. So I need this to be able to like move in and out of the shots. So it's just a convenient little rig for me to have for this type of stuff. All right. So that's it for the questions. I'll cover a little bit of my adventures. I don't have anything too much to share because I shared a lot last week. I had a lot of time to catch up on. But I do need to close the loop on something. So last week I told you that I was going to try to get my Halloween costume together. I did get the Halloween costume in time. However, I did not get a picture of myself in the costume in time to include it in last week's Q&A. So I did do the costume. However, I had a light medical issue. I'm fine now, but I had a light medical issue that I'm not going to get into the details of. But that happened to me basically like the night before Halloween and basically kind of rendered me uncostumable through Halloween. So I didn't actually get to wear my costume out or go anywhere. I was sort of couch ridden, but I did get a picture together for you. So I'm not going to tell you who I was or who I was trying to be, but I'll give you a hint. The hint is memories of now. So I'll have the picture here. You can check that out. Let me know what you think. But I think this is a costume I can do again in the future. So anyway, that was a little bit disappointing that I couldn't like really do it. Like we did a whole thing here at the office with the costume contest and all that. I couldn't participate in that, which is unfortunate, but you know, life happens. And that pretty much took most of my energy. And that said, I was fairly couch ridden this weekend. So, you know, I have particular video games that I would like to play in my downtime, the little downtime that I create for myself. But I've talked before on these videos that like, I'm really not like an RPG player because my memory's not great. And that just feels a lot like work to me, you know, keeping track of inventory and, you know, having to assemble tasks and stuff like that. I'm like, this is like what I do at work, you know? But there's a game called Stardew Valley that I heard good things about. I'd tried playing it before on like my iPad phone type thing. It was just not that enjoyable as a navigation experience, but I recently picked it up again and have a controller for it now, and I find that makes the experience a lot better. So I got into that this weekend a little bit, and I think I might have crossed over the Rubicon a little bit of like, you know, I don't know what's happening in this game, and I would just get lost and days would go by and I hadn't accomplished anything. But now I'm actually like getting some stuff done and I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. Oh, this is going to be a rabbit hole and it's going to like suck up a lot of my time. So we'll see how much I continue to do it. But for any of you who've played Stardew Valley, it's a very innocent, very, you know, fun, interesting kind of game. And I'm sort of having fun with it right now. That's it for on the personal front. You know, again, I was kind of out of commission for most of last week, but I'm back in shape now. So I'll go ahead and wrap this thing up, and I do have some fun facts, so stick around for a second. But I want to thank you for watching. You know, please leave me some feedback. Let me know how I'm doing, and you know, ask me questions so that we can keep doing this for the future. I really appreciate the questions that have been coming in. It's been really good. I've been having a good time putting these together. Check out gouletpens.com as well. Self-sponsored here for your fountain pen, ink, and paper needs. And subscribe to all our channels too, because we are putting out content on the regular. So when I was looking at fun facts, I got a lot of good feedbacks from people about doing fun facts. I used to do this on the Pencast a lot. You know, I've varied up like questions of the week, writing prompts, things like that. The thing that I like about doing the fun facts is I get to go find the facts. You know what I mean? I get to sort of dream something up. It's a little bit of work, but I also have fun with it. So I don't know, maybe I'll lean a little towards the fun facts. But I was thinking, because we had some questions and we've had a lot of feedback continually about like removing the shimmer out of ink and stuff like that. It's become an ongoing thing. But I was thinking like, yeah, shimmer and, you know, mica and glitter and all that stuff. I was like, where did that come from? I was like, who made glitter? Who came up with that? And that just sent me down a rabbit hole. Most of this is pulled from the Wikipedia page for glitter, which is, you know, I love Wikipedia. So here we go. Glitter. Glittering surfaces have been found to be used since prehistoric times in the arts and in cosmetics. The modern English word glitter comes from the Middle English word glitterin, possibly by way of the Old Norse word glittra. However, as early as 30,000 years ago, mica flakes were used to give cave paintings a glittering appearance. Isn't that crazy? That's so long ago. So we've always liked glittery things. Prehistoric humans are believed to have used cosmetics made of powdered hematite, a sparkling mineral. Isn't that fascinating? But there's more. The first production of modern plastic glitter is credited to the German-born American machinist Henry F. Ruschmann, who invented a machine to cut photo films and paper back in the 1930s. Sometimes the machine stuttered, generating small pieces of the glossy cellulose that they used for the film, and employees would pick it up and use it as snow to decorate their Christmas trees. And then modern glitter was born. With his partner, Harry Getz, Ruschmann cut mica into washers and glitter from metallized cellulose acetate film. So cellulose acetate, which you can also use, to make pens, but very commonly used back in film back in the day for like photos and videos and stuff. During World War II, glass glitter became unavailable. So Ruschmann found a market for scrap plastics, which were ground into glitter. There you go. In 1943, he purchased Meadowbrook Farm in Bernardsville, New Jersey, where he founded Meadowbrook Farm Inventions in 1948 to produce industrial glitter. MFI became Meadowbrook Inventions Incorporated in 1953. Ruschmann filed a patent for a mechanism for cross-cutting films as well as other glitter-related inventions. And it's very fascinating. So substrates for cutting glitter expanded from metallized cellulose and aluminum foil to metallized and iridescent film, polyester, PVC, and laminations are cut into various shapes. So they can be triangles, squares, hexagons, all kinds of stuff like that. It's so small, but they can do all different kinds of shapes with it. And then this is the coolest part, and then I'm almost done. Today, over 20,000 varieties of glitter are manufactured in a vast number of different colors, sizes, and materials. And due to their unique characteristics, glitter has also proven to be useful for forensic evidence. Because of the tens of thousands of different commercial glitters, identical glitter particles can be compelling evidence that a suspect has been at a crime scene. Forensic scientist Edwin Jones has one of the largest collections of glitter consisting of over 1,000 different samples used in comparison of samples taken from crime scenes. Glitter particles are easily transferred through the air or by touch, yet cling to bodies and clothing, often unnoticed by suspects. So I thought that was fascinating. Not only is there a ton of glitter around, which is also kind of a nightmare environmentally, but it is kind of cool that it can be used forensically as well. I had no idea about that. That's kind of neat. So there you go. Lots of facts about glitter. I'm done for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Right on.